Alright, for this Tech Tuesday segment, we're going to look at podcasting. At the end of this segment, you will be familiar with what a podcast is, how podcasting can be used to enhance learning, and how to set up a podcast feed and publish a podcast to iTunes. And then we'll also look at some additional podcasting resources. So, what is a podcast? Podcasting is a method of distributing digital audio and video files over the internet, typically for convenient use on a portable media device such as an MP3 player, and we would most commonly think of that MP3 player as an iPod. Here's an analogy. You are subscribing to a magazine. Let's say it's National Geographic. The mail carrier brings that magazine to your mailbox every month, and all you have to do to get it is walk outside and take it out of your mailbox. If you want that magazine but you have not subscribed to it, then you're going to have to get in your car and drive to the local supermarket or bookstore, pick it up off a newsstand and stand in line and buy it and then drive home again. Podcasting is much like that. Once you set up a podcast, you just simply post your content on one end and it's available to your students essentially on the other end automatically. A couple of podcasting myths. First myth, I need a Mac to produce a podcast. Well, no, it's nice and it's handy, and podcasting, I guess, kind of started out on that platform, but no, you don't need a Mac. You can do it on any standard PC. Another myth, my students need iPods to download a podcast. Well, iPods are, by and large, the most common type of portable media player, but you don't absolutely need an iPod. In fact, what makes a podcast really is the idea of syndication, not necessarily the device. The idea that the content comes to you automatically really is what distinguishes a podcast. Okay, so why podcast in the first place? Well, one obvious reason you would want to do that would be to overcome the negative effects of time and distance. If your students have your content on a portable media device, such as an iPod, then they've got access to your content 24/7 wherever they happen to be. That takes us into the idea of lag time versus bonus time, or converting lag time to bonus time. There are many little snippets of time in the life of a student when they're just doing things like walking to and from campus, waiting for the bus, sitting on the bus, etc. Those kinds of activities where they could pull out an iPod, put it in their earbuds, and review lesson content. Another idea would be for the sake of repetition. Maybe a student is sitting in class, and right when you're delivering a very important point, they're off in the ozone or spacing out. And if they have your lecture on an iPod, then they can go back and rewind that lecture and listen to that piece of content, and actually maybe they need to repeat something several times in order to get or to reinforce the point. So it's available to do that if it's on an iPod. Okay, so how do we go about creating a podcast? There are essentially 4 steps involved. First thing we want to do is create a media file, and we would principally think of that as being an audio file, but it could also be a PowerPoint file with embedded audio, or it could be video, and we could create that video ourselves with a camcorder, or we could get that video from some other place. It could even be a text file. Once we have our media file, we need to put it up on the web, and what we're going to do in this instance is use a web-based application called Blogger, and you'll see why as we get further into this. And when we've done that, the next step is to create from that blog an RSS feed, and we're going to use an application called FeedBurner to do that. And that's roughly the equivalent of subscribing to a magazine, going back to the analogy we used earlier. And then once we've done that, we're going to submit our feed to iTunes, and then it'll be available to our students as a podcast. And that's pretty much it. Once you've done those 4 steps, you can go back and post additional items to your blog and also to your podcast at the same time. By just repeating steps 1 and 2. You can create additional items of content and then just post them to Blogger, and they will automatically be available in Blogger and also in iTunes. And that's handy for your students because now your students can access that content in any number of different ways. They can go right to the Blogger website and read your blog postings, or they can link to that blog from within Blackboard, or they can subscribe to your iTunes podcast and get that content downloaded directly onto their iPods. In this Tech Tuesday segment, we've presented a brief overview of the podcasting process. In the next segment, we'll take a look at each of the 4 steps we've mentioned in more detail. And as always, please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. I'd love to hear from you.